Yeah, the other sense, of course, I believe this is a sense, is the IT skills. And as I grew up without even television sets, um, this is something that my generation, I think, largely battles with. But we have got children who can help us. But you guys going into the dairy field and future, you're going to be spending a lot of time here because there are so many programs that are now out, really exciting programs that are helping dairy farmers and vets. I mean, this Sense Hub bottom left is just a new one, and that'll pick up a cow that's either cycling, estrus, or ill, or lame, or whatever. Uh, I'm not sure exactly how it works because it's so new. It's developed, it's come out since I've retired, but I'm going to have a chat with the reps as soon as I can get hold of them, just to know. I mean, you must keep learning, even if you aren't going to apply it. And these others, Affimilk, Affikim, my nephew on the farm was one of the first in this district to use Affikim, and that's an Israeli product. And the Affikim headquarters in Israel, Tel Aviv or whatever, they know where every cow in the world that's got an Affikim tag or on a computer, they've got a headquarter computer. And I remember when Wally, my nephew, first applied these tags to her cow. In those days, he used the pedometers. They measured how much the cow walked each day, and if she walked above the average of the herd, she'd get flagged after she was milking, and the gate would automatically put her aside. If she'd walked more than the average, chances were she was in heat, for instance. If she'd walked a lot less, she was flagged. She had to be looked at in case she was lame or ill. They measure the electrical conductivity of the milk. They pick up mastitis before it's even formed any clots in the milk. These are wonderful systems. And Waikato, of course, De Lavelle, this is stuff that you guys can be just so excited to be working with. And as I say, you work with the people who are developing these and watching them and servicing them. And it's part of that lovely interrelationship that we can get with the people that we work alongside. So that's great. And I just loved working with Effie. Yeah. Now I'm going to go back to this pasture. I love this picture for some reason or other. And again, it's my cosmic belief, our creator, and the wonder of what goes on. And there is the soil. Obviously, this is not a pasture being planted. I imagine it's potatoes or something, but it doesn't matter. That is what we live on this earth. The soil and the microbes in the soil, we all live on that because that's where our food ultimately originally comes from. And if you look inside, and I remember getting on the internet and looking into these small atoms and protons and neutrons, and I mean, those are so small. And even there's a neutron inside the middle there. When they sort of dissect that open and how the symmetry and how that works. And remember this, because I'm going to refer to it back again. One of the lovely things, you can swear like you hang. 9 o'clock at night, you get called out to do a carving. Mostly these days, we don't do too much because, as I say, the management on our dairy farms, generally speaking, is very jacked up. The easier carvings are done by the staff on the farms or the neighbor. But when we called out at 8 o'clock and you get, oh, no, wait a bit, 11 o'clock, you get out of bed. And you know, the farmer's been pulling all day and his manager's been pulling and the neighbor's been pulling and the rep that was selling dip and the diesel mechanic has been pulling. By 11 o'clock, they decide the vet had better come. So you storm out of bed, you get into your bucky and you curse all the way. I'm going to charge these bastards. I'm going to make them pay, pulling me out of bed. I bet this thing's been carving all day. It's going to be rotten. And, you know, you're fuming away there. And you get there and you might do a Caesar. I mean, I've done lots of Caesars in the moonlight by the lights of the truck, by the bucky. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I wrote a very nice story in one of my first ever books. It appears in this book of mine. I don't know if you can see it. The Collected Short Stories of Todd Collins. It's one of the ones that won an award in one of the short story competitions. how I pulled out a calf and I threw it out into the brambles or whatever it was. It was dead. And a farmer was cross with me because I hadn't got a live calf out and so on and so forth. And anyhow, to cut a very long story short, that calf was alive. As I threw it and it landed, his wife heard it take a breath. She was standing in the shadows there. I wasn't even aware that Mrs. Moorcroft was there. This was in the Eastern Cape, Queenstown. And she loaded this calf up into a bakkie and took her up to the house and resuscitated it. 3 years later, I think it was the reserve grand champion bull at Bloemfontein for the National Hereford Championships. So anyhow, that's besides the point. So you're going out there at night, or the farmer, you tell the farmer, he goes out to fix a pump or something. Just tarry a while. Look up at that sky. Look up at that glorious, glorious sky and realize it is just 1/1000th of the true universe that we are seeing, that we are part of. It is just so wondrous. And you look at the planets, our tiny, minuscule solar system, and you compare them to that. There's a greater order of things that is just too phenomenal, and we're part of it. And therefore, I love this old song and I think to myself, what a wonderful, I see skies of blue and roses too. Remember that song? Well, Louis Armstrong. Wonderful. We really are privileged as dairy vets, country vets, to be part of this wonderful world and to see it every day. It's not always wonderful. This is a picture I got, but it doesn't really show the true effect. I was called out also late one evening and it was blizzarding. The snow was coming down. I was freezing and it was a terribly slushy track to get to this distant farm. And this cow was halfway up a big mountainside and she had a prolapsed uterus. Something that we do deal with often, although these larger herds, sad to say or otherwise, kind of the cow, a thing like this in the large dairy herd, she will just get shot straight away, destroyed. But anyhow, again, here's where our compassion comes in. Sometimes it's a cow that we want to help, and it can help that cow out. She might produce 12,000 liters of milk in the next year. That cow that I was referring to in the snow and the sleet had a terribly prolapsed uterus. And just for interest's sake, where are we? I couldn't get that prolapse back. I tried every trick in the trade. I even used old James Herriot's trick with pouring brown sugar over the uterus to try and get it to shrivel. I took a chance and gave some intertocin, which normally you don't give until it's back inside. And I couldn't. I really tried everything. We laid her downhill, raised her hindquarters, tried to use gravity. No go. So I said to Mr. Joubert, wonderful old man, Mr. Joubert, his wife actually was one of the first to brew cannabis oils and things like that. Anyhow, I said, Mr. Joubert, I'm sorry, I am beaten. And he said, no, I thought you wouldn't. I thought you wouldn't be able to shape. And he pulled out a revolver and shot her, just like that. So before going away, I said, no, I've got to. I have to find out why I couldn't get this uterus back in. It's just foxed me. So I brought out, remember I showed you this knife earlier, and I cut that uterus open. And inside it were miles of distended, inflated intestines. The intestines had obviously prolapsed through, very uncommon, into the uterus, and it's swollen with gas. And there's no way in hell, heaven or hell, you'd have been able to get that back inside. So just it's just one of those things I remember. The other thing is with prolapses, first thing you do before anything else, you get out your nose tongs, hold that cow, because the number of cows that you start working on that just take off and gallop. And Gavin and I were having a chat the other day. He had one that was galloped off downhill, and this great big thing was swaying from side to side, and she was galloping down the hill. and it just broke. The uterus went one way, cow went the other way for about 20 seconds, and she just dropped dead, obviously from very severe blood loss. On another occasion, I had one that like that, and she also galloped downhill, and she dropped dead, but the uterus was still there. But she'd obviously ruptured one of her, would it have been a middle uterine artery? You guys have probably done anatomy more recently than me. And then another time, you won't believe this, and it was Gavin's story, also not holding the tongs first, approaching this animal a little bit wild, and she galloped away, and he was just waiting for the worst. And they couldn't believe their eyes, because this uterus was bouncing from side to side, up and down, and disappeared back inside the cow. Yeah, what an absolute fluke. Anyhow, you'll notice here, bottom right, there's no tongs in the nose, bad mistake. Bottom right, the feet have been tied up, and her hind legs have been pulled out behind her. I learned this trick, and I imagine now you're all taught to do this. I learned this from one of the New Zealand vet I got to know, and it makes it so much easier. You can actually do it on your own here. Well, someone's holding the rope to keep her legs behind her, and someone's holding the nose. And you crouch behind you with your apron around your neck, holding up that uterus, and you can just feed it in, and it just goes in over the pelvic girdle and just feeds in there. Or you can have, if you've got assistance, people on either side holding that uterus up with any sort of sheet or even a board. But obviously the first thing you do is to get rid of all that retained placenta that's attached there. The other one that, the other one that can become, there you are, can become quite a challenge are these prolapsed cervixes, vagina cervixes. And here, just a few tips. If they get very hard, my golly, they're hard to reduce if they are allowed to dehydrate a bit. I was looking at this picture, and I think I can see some sutures there. So whether she'd been sutured before and she's prolapsed or broken those sutures, I'm not sure. But a couple of times I've battled to get these back in, and I've battled to get these back in, and I've used a needle. There we are. I've used a needle to empty the bladder. Sometimes the bladder flips up and is in there, and that's one of the reasons why. Like the gas that was in that uterus in the intestines, so that sometimes the prolapsed cervix can have the bladder that's been flipped up and it's full of urine. You're going to battle to get it back in. So just put in a wide board needle, that nice, usually the pink cup or even the bigger one, drain the bladder, and in it goes. And then this is this Buna, or this, you probably know the name of the stitch, the Buna needle. I've used it so often, obviously with an epidural, and you put it in there, this suture, nice strong cord umbilical tape, or whatever, goes right around. And you, instead of doing these sutures across here, and I do that all the time in my last 30 years of practice. Brilliant. You just got to keep the tip nice and sharp. Yeah, just a bit of practical tips for a future dairy vet. And here's one I wish I'd learned years ago. There I am, the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, incidentally, they are very proud of my comrades, Maris and Cravat. These are stainless steel rings that our local engineer made for me. And here's about, I don't know, 15 meters of ordinary polypropylene polyester rope. Now, I hope I can describe this for you. Sorry I didn't take a photo of it in action, but I've used it many times and delivered carbs on my own or with one helper. And it's so easy, provided the calf is now presented properly with the little hooves sticking out and the head presented straight once you've straightened it out, or the hind leg if it's a posterior presentation, but it just is a big calf and needs pure traction. Okay, so one of those stainless steel rings you attach to the legs. So you've got your calving ropes, one calving rope attached to each end, attached to one of the legs, and you loop so that there's a loop. The calving rope's just a loop from one leg to the other, and you attach that calving rope, you feed it through one of those rings and attach it there. And the other calving rope you put round behind the calf's head. It doesn't have to go through the mouth, especially if it's alive. Below the ears, must be below the ears. And that calving rope comes out, and it also attaches to that ring, one way or the other. You attach it so that they're much the same length. Now, that ring that's attached to the calf via the calving ropes, you tie one end of your long rope to, your polystyrene rope. In the meantime, the other ring you've attached to a solid object somewhere, a tree, a fence pole, your bucky bumper or tow bar, something rigid, about, say, 5 meters away. And so this end of the rope gets tied to the ring at the calf, and you feed this rope back through the ring at the tree or the fence, back and through that ring at the calf. Okay, so you've got a pulley system, that's all it is. And then that's as much as you need. You can do it again to get 4 throws, but normally just from the calf to the ring and back to the calf, and the loose end, or even before the loose end, you attach your broomstick or whatever it is, bit of piping, attach it, and you can pull. And then your helper, if there's an assistant, he can just pull with traction, and that gives the traction of about 3-4 men. And then when it's getting tight, and it's taut between the calf and the tree, say, then I will just lean on the rope gently up and down and maneuver the calf out. And really, as I say, I've done this on my own and pushed off without seeing the farmer. And the next thing, he phones the practice and says, tell the vets not to come out, she calved on her own. And you've got to try and convince the farmer that, no, I came out on my own and I delivered the calf, and I'm going to send you a bill for that. So anyhow, those rings and the rope, I wish I'd known about when I started practice. It would have made so many deliveries easy and quick and pleasant and nice. Even if they're lying down, you can do it at ground level. Now, why is Lucy screaming? I've just told you about quite a lot of happy things. Lucy was a final year student who'd never seen a calf being born. She came, Chris Carrington, was he Professor Dr. Chris Carrington, lecturer at OP, my class was full of academics. Professor Jerry Swan, the dean, Moritz van Vuren, Leon Przeski, I believe a great lecturer, Mark Williams, became a butterfly expert, Professor Mark Williams, Professor Koos Kutzer from the Institute. So it goes on. We had very academic years. The only guy who ended up in large animal, well, dairy practice. Anyhow, so Chris Carrington had said to Katie, come, go down to my old friend Todd in the Platteland and learn a bit. She had, I think, 2 weeks, what do you call it, seeing practice. And the first morning she was there, a calving case came in, and she was so thrilled. And it's from my dear friend Mike. He's probably one of my closest farming friends. And I'm just going to have another sip of my coffee. And we drove there. Lucy was thrilled. She was excited. We drove past Crocosmia flowers full of malachite sunbirds. We could see the Drakensberg Mountains covered with snow. And I told her about the flowers that grew there, which different pass I'd, because I do a lot of mountaineering. And I pointed out the pass that I'd pioneered a route up and so on. And it was a lovely, lovely day. And we got to the cow, and she was lying down just alongside some beautiful oak trees with the mountains in the background. And Lucy put on her overalls and white gumboots, and she skipped around to the back of the cow, and she just let out that scream, her first scream, because where the anus and the vulva of the cow should have been was just a big gaping hole with blood and muscle and tendrils hanging. the jackals had got at her. Jackals have become a big problem in our area. The jackals had got at her. And but the little calf was still there. You could see its muzzle sort of flaring. And I think it was both front legs were facing backwards. What do you call that? Reflected forelegs. So I offered her to put her hand in there and help straighten out the forelegs, and showed how we give her an epidural, sterile, very strict. Always clip the hair over the tail and disinfect with a bit of meths and give the epidural. I was taught that way, and I've done it all my life, and it just looks professional. And it is professional. So we gave her the epidural. So I stuck my hand in and straightened out, pushed the head back a bit and straightened out the forelegs. And then I did my Lord of the Rings thing. I attached the carving ropes onto the rings and back, and there was a nice oak tree there. Attached the other ring there and went around, and I said, "Okay, Lucy, you have a go. You pull the scarf out." And she did. As a little girl, she wasn't big at all. And she pulled the scarf out, and it was a bull calf. And it was alive, despite her poor mum having been, she was obviously down with subclinical milk fever or something like that, or maybe already a bit of obturator paralysis, whatever. But she was finished. She was doomed. Anyhow, out comes this calf, which is a bull calf. Now, in those days, there was absolutely no market for bull calf, for dairy bull calves. These days, there's some chaps, especially up in the Free State, who come around here and certainly buy the bull calves and they raise them. They're very effective. I enjoy chatting to, I think it's Kwesi who comes. Anyhow, so before, and there's this bull calf flapping its head and its ears and snorting and what have you. And Zorni, the head dairyman, I've got to know him and he knows my Bucky very well. He knew where my post-mortem knife was kept, and it's usually razor sharp. So he walked, and before her very eyes, he slit this calf's throat. And well, that was the second scream. Remember? Showed you that. That was her second scream. First, when she'd seen that terrible sight, then when the calf's throat was cut, and the third scream was while she was remonstrating with me that she could have taken that calf home to Houghton, Joburg, and reared it in their garden, and it could have become her pet or something like that. A rifle shot went off, and Mike had just shot the cow. Well, that was the third scream. We didn't talk at all on the way back to the surgery. In fact, Lucy didn't leave our clinic rooms for the rest of the fortnight, and she left the second her 2 weeks with us was up. And I believe, and this is sad to say, I believe she probably would have gone into a form of post-traumatic stress disorder. I honestly do. She was so shocked by that. And I think a lot of us, and I even tell my farmers, in fact, that large herds conference, I said, you guys don't realize the amount of subdural or whatever, you don't realize the stress we go to. And there's a lovely cow that you've got to shoot because she's broken her leg in that. And I think that's one of the reasons we too tend to suffer from stress. We see these horrible sights and we pretend we're tough and don't notice them. These jackals, I think, has thrived in our district because of all the vulture restaurants. Every farm has got a spot on a high position where those carcasses go. And I'm now involved actually in a bearded vulture project where we're going to try and rear and develop the bearded vulture population in South Africa, working alongside the Spanish. Anyhow, these jackal are an absolute blighter, and they, as I say, have carte blanche on these vulture restaurants all throughout the year. Okay, again, let's get back to the gist of my talk. Why a dairy vet? Okay, and again, just although you guys are entering a really technical computer type approach to veterinary science or veterinary surgery, veterinary practice, you are still going to have the thrills of delivering calves or doing postmortems to decide what's going on in a farm if they're losing too many calves or cows and so on. But the thrills of this, and again, I'm going to share with you another story, which I love, which actually got me as a writer, started making my mark. I was called out one Saturday afternoon. My wife and older two daughters were out playing tennis, And little Rebecca, who was then 4 years old, our Laatlamaki, she was at home with me, and we had a call from a neighbor to go up to near the Berg, to near Drakensberg Garden Hotel. Any of you know the district? And it was a small plot. They had just a couple of dairy cows. And by the time I got there, by the time I got there, the old caretaker was fast asleep. He'd had too much Saturday lunchtime beer. So, and I examined this heifer. She was certainly in full labor, but the calf inside her was enormous, probably a third of her body weight of the mother's size. So I lay her down, epidural, local anesthetic, etc., and got Rebecca to wash up, to scrub up in our buckets of disinfectant F10, Love F10. And we proceeded to do a cesarean, and we extracted a bonny live calf. It's always nice. One of those thrills of a veterinary practice, dairy vet, is to produce a live calf. And Rebecca, I got her to put some straw into the calf's nose to get it snorting and the mucus out, and so on, and pour some cold water into its ears, does the same thing, gets them going vital. And then she held the uterine walls together while I reduced them, and likewise with the muscle, and she was handing me the instruments and whatnot. So she was a major player in a major surgical procedure. So we go home. I'm as chuffed as all hang with this little 4-year-old that's been with me. As I say, last child's in the woods, no chance if your kids are doing that sort of stuff. And then it was getting a bit dark, and Trish and Carolyn and Lee returned from tennis, and Rebecca ran out, so excited. And so I followed her quietly, and I stood in the shadows of our veranda, our porch here, to listen to her description of this major surgical procedure in which she played a major role. And she ran out. Incidentally, I put this in there. I'm sad this product has gone off the market. VTech apparently will make one up for you. This Planipart clenbuterol reduces the contraction of the uterus and makes cesareans and any other forms of dystocias to handle so much easier. The uterus just relaxes, and certainly suturing. You know, if you don't use this and you're doing a fresh cesarean, for example, that jolly, once the calf's out, this the uterus just contracts and disappears into the dark underworld deep inside, and you've got to try and suture it up just using feel. But using Planipart 10 mils before you even start the op or the dystocia is a godsend. It's absolutely a godsend. So remember it, clenbuterol, and yeah, standard. Anyhow, so Rebecca ran out to tell Tricia and Cara and Lee what she'd just done, and I stood in the shadows waiting for her description of this calf that had come out of this cow that we'd seeded. There she is, running to Mum or Cara or Lee. Got this off the internet. And she shouted, guess what? Guess what Dad bought me on the way home? A lunch bar. So priorities, I think I called that story. I wrote that story up, and it got into the back page of Getaway magazine, and it was featured in South African Airways in-flight magazine, and I called it priorities. Her priority was a lunch bar.